What's up, guys? Nick Harrison here, and today I'm going to talk about the 9 misconceptions of me becoming a pilot. These are questions that I get talked to or asked about all the time that some people just either don't understand or just totally think way differently than what the reality is. So I'm going to talk about 9 misconceptions of being a private pilot.
Hey, I'm Nick. I'm a private pilot and traveler who enjoys flying airplanes and seeing different places in the world. I hope you find my content entertaining, and if you do, consider subscribing to my channel.
Now, with each one of these misconceptions, it may seem obvious to you. You may think that the person asking this is just, dumb or doesn't have intelligence. That's not the case. People just sometimes have never flown before or never flown on a small plane before where you can truly see outside, see the runway, see the taxiway, see the airport, etc. So the first misconception is that we are taking off on the taxiway. Again, that seems kind of weird, but I sort of, devil's advocate being played, can understand where people are coming from when they ask that, because many times an airport will have a very long runway and then a very long taxiway that is exactly parallel to that. If you don't know any different and you don't know what the markings mean, I guess you could sort of see that maybe the taxiway is actually the runway, even though it's not. So I was flying with somebody a while back and we were taxiing down the taxiway and they were preparing for takeoff, and I explained to them that, hey, we're not on the runway yet. So taxiways and runways are different, but not everybody understands that. The second misconception is that I am listening to someone personally read me the weather. Many airports have an ASOS or AWOS or an ATIS. An ATIS is recorded usually by a human, and it's updated once every hour. These are normally for your larger airports or ones that have control towers, controlled airports. AWOS and ASOS are automated weather systems, and they're robot or artificial voices that are talking on there. You can tune into those on the radio in the airplane, which you will do before you take off, before you land, just to get the information of which way the wind's blowing, so you know which direction to land. You want to know if there's any cloud information, your altimeter settings, so you know how high you're going to be flying by watching your altimeter in your plane, etc. That is not a person that is personally reading me that over the radio. That is just an automated system that plays on loop that you can tune into in the radio in the plane. You can also dial these by phone, but when you're in the air, you're using the radio in the plane. Number 3, I fly at 10,000 feet. Now again, for someone that's not into aviation and maybe has only flown once or twice their entire life, they might not understand what different altitudes are. I am in the Charlotte, North Carolina region, and around this area, we're roughly between 600 and 700 feet above sea level. The altitude that you will see on your altimeter in your plane when you're sitting on the ground is going to be the height of the ground above sea level. It's not going to be 0 feet, so you might be on the ground, but around here I'm reading 680 something feet. Some people have asked me, hey, how high are you flying in that video? Or how high are you flying in that picture? Are you at about 10,000 feet? No, not 10,000 feet. So normally I fly between 2,000 and 6,000, sometimes 7,000 feet. There's a bunch to get into as far as VFR altitudes, depending on which direction you're flying and so on, but normally for just practicing, I'm maybe around 3,000 or below, and then for cruising or cross-country flight, it depends on which direction I'm flying, and what the winds are doing at those directions will dictate that. However, the highest that I've ever flown is 6,500 feet. This can change when you get out west or towards mountainous areas, because again, the mountain itself might be at 5,500 feet. You don't want to fly at 6,000 feet because then you only have 500 feet of clearance. So around here, the highest I have flown is 6,500 feet, and around here is the only place that I've flown, so I haven't had a need to go any higher than that. But I do not fly at 10,000 feet in my smaller planes that I fly. That's something that jetliners do, or big corporate jets. They might fly a lot higher, or they definitely fly a lot higher. But for me, just cruising around, normally by the time I get up to cruise and then come in and land, I don't need a super high altitude, because by the time I climb up, it's time to start descending back down. The next misconception is that I'm flying at 200 plus miles an hour. Again, I'm flying smaller planes. They do not cruise at 200 miles an hour. They don't even have a max speed at 200 miles an hour unless you're doing maybe a heavy descent or emergency descent, something like that. And even then, you're pushing probably the limits of the airframes. I usually climb a little bit slower than I cruise, just because it takes more power to climb than it does to cruise. And I'm usually cruising at around 115 to 120 miles per hour. So not all planes that you see in the sky are going 200 miles an hour. Another misconception that I get talked to about a lot is people that have flight simulators and they think that flying an airplane is exactly like the simulator. I can't answer this. I don't know, because I don't have a nice simulator. I did all of my training in an actual airplane, not in a simulator. It may be similar. I'm sure it is very similar, but I can imagine that some of the things that you learn in actual flying versus simulation are going to vary, especially when it comes to landing. There's just a feeling that you get with the yoke and the pressures. You can also feel yourself with kind of the G's and the way you're moving in the plane that are different with flying that you're not going to feel sitting in a chair in a simulator. So while it may be similar, I really don't, I can't answer that, but I would imagine it's definitely different. I don't think somebody that has 100 hours of simulator time is going to be ready to go fly an airplane on their own. Number 6 is that I do spins and acrobatics and crazy maneuvers all the time. So I've had some friends that, again, aren't necessarily into aviation that ask me all the time, hey, are you going to go do some spins or climbs or twists and turns? No, I am not. The planes that I fly are not designed for that. They're not ready for acrobatic maneuvers, especially at the weight and the payload that I am flying at. Even then, that is a skill and an art that you would need to master and get some training on specifically for doing that. And they can be dangerous if you do not know how to recover from spins very well or acrobatics or anything like that. And then you also have to consider your speeds and maneuvering speeds and how that compares to the operating manual of the airplane, if you're even allowed to do that or if that plane is even rated to do that. So no, I do not do spins. I do not do acrobatic twists and turns and maneuvers. I do maneuvers. However, they are steep turns for practice, some stalls just for practice and staying proficient, and then just your basic cruising and flying around, turns around a point, stuff like that. Nothing crazy, nothing acrobatic, nothing that would make for a really good air show. The next misconception is one that I get asked primarily by people who have simply never flown before, and that is, since I'm flying a small plane, if I lost an engine, and again, I only have a single engine airplane that I'm flying right now, if I lost an engine, that I would just fall to the ground. Do I ever get scared about that? Okay, first of all, I do not get scared about it because we have spent the majority of flight training solely planning on emergencies. That's the whole purpose of flight training, number one. Number two, planes do not just fall out of the sky. And to prove this, you can actually just take a sheet of paper right now, hold it perfectly horizontal in the air. Just hold a piece of paper out and then let go. See what happens. It will go down very quick to the ground, but it's not just going to fall and smack the ground. Eventually, it will start to kind of sway back and forth. It's gliding. Now, an airplane's not going to glide like that, but what I'm getting at is just the purpose of it. There is surface area on that plane that will prevent it from just going down. Even if you tried to make the plane just fall straight to the ground, it's not going to. There are airfoils, there's wings that allow it to glide. So the planes that I fly have a roughly 9-to-1 glide ratio. So you can do the math, however many feet in the air you are, you have that many feet of glide. So depending on your area, again, you don't know until it happens to you. I'm not going to speak out of turn. I haven't been in an emergency situation. However, we have practiced it a bunch, and I am very spoiled around here because there's a lot of farms and fields and very good options that I would consider if I was to lose an engine. But planes do not just fall out of the sky. That is a misconception that really cannot happen. I mean, they will come down very quickly, but they're not just going to be flying along and go straight down. The next misconception is that I fly brand new planes. So let's talk about this for a second. Very rarely are any planes just brand new. Even that nice airliner with Delta Airlines or one of the big names are not brand new planes. They might be, but the majority of the time they're older planes. Same is the case with the planes that I fly. Most of those are 50, 60-year-old planes. You may be of concern with that because if you have a 50 or 60-year-old car, you may be starting to notice some wear and tear, some problems and stuff like that. However, planes go through a lot more extensive maintenance and inspections than cars do. I live in North Carolina. We have to do vehicle inspections once a year annually for every vehicle that you own in North Carolina in order to renew your property tax and get your sticker for your tag. With that said, though, it's one of them deals where if you know somebody, he might pass you just, they're not going to lie about anything and jeopardize their credentials, but it's easy to get a vehicle inspection passed if you know somebody. Airplanes are not like that. We're talking about the FAA and annual inspections that must be done on those planes. It's not just Joe Blow running an inspection shop like it is with your vehicle. Those inspections are regulated, and there's more than just one. If the plane is used for training or for hire, there are additional inspections that have to be done every 100 hours. Different equipment in the plane also has to be tested and inspected individually, and then you have an overall annual inspection. On top of that, many planes, the motors in those planes get overhauled and renewed. So even though you might be driving a 50-year-old car on the original motor, you're starting to see some problems. A 50-year-old plane might be on its third or fourth motor, or at least the third or fourth overhaul of the motor. So I'm not flying brand new planes. I never have, and I probably never will unless I just have a big stack of pennies that gets dumped on my head. The last misconception that I'm going to talk about, and it's probably the one I get talked to about the most, is that I'm talking to air traffic control every time I talk on the radio. So as pilots, of course, we have to talk on the radio a bunch. However, many times, at least in the airports that I am flying in and out of, I am talking on a common traffic frequency. It's a CTAF, Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. And basically what that is I'm talking a bunch. I'm stating all my positions, certain miles out, 10 miles, 5 miles, 3 miles. I'm talking about what position I am in the traffic pattern, where I'm at on the departure, where I'm at on the taxiways, etc. However, that is just stating my position. So when I talk, no one is talking back to me. I'm not getting cleared for takeoff. And I've taken passengers even that I will state my departure intentions and that I'm taking the runway and where I'm departing to. And then they'll say, hey, who was it that talked back to you and said you're cleared for takeoff? Well, no one. Again, there's a lot of uncontrolled airspace, or at least airspace that has airports that you do not have to talk to anyone in my area. And that is the majority of where I fly. So let me take you to the computer and show you kind of what I'm talking about. So here you can see something that probably looks very confusing and very involved. Basically, to make things simple, each one of these pink circles with the little tags coming off of them, and each one of the blue circles with the tags coming off of them, all those are airports. Okay, there's also airports inside of these little circles that do not have this pink thing on them, like in there. So all of these little circles, no matter if it's this big blue one, if it's this pink one, these sort of magenta faded lines, all of these are airspaces. However, the only airports that have air traffic control are the ones that are blue like this. So all of these pink ones that you see have no air traffic control tower. And you do not have to be talking to anyone on the radio if you are flying anywhere besides the airspace that are surrounding these air traffic control tower airports. The exception is if you're really high in the air, which again, I do not fly above 18,000 feet. But if you are inside of these airspaces, there are different requirements depending on the airspaces. But the three big ones are Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. And to make this simple, a Bravo airspace looks like this with the big blue lines. Charlies are like this pink line here, pink line here. And then Deltas are your smaller ones like this, and they're denoted by this blue dashed line there. I'm not going to go into again, I'm not an instructor. I'm not going to go to an airspace lesson, but I just wanted to show you how much airspace there is over here in my part of the country that is not air traffic, that you do not have to talk to air traffic control. So if you were to take off out of this airport right here, Kilo Romeo Charlie Zulu, you would not have to talk to air traffic control. And in fact, if you tried to get a takeoff clearance just for a VFR departure out of there, there's no one to even talk to. Even if you tried, there's no one that has control of that to get you out of that airport. So basically, any of these airports that are not in a controlled airspace, all you're doing is stating your intentions on the radio. You may have a pilot or somebody that replies back to you, that talks back to you just to confirm, hey, where are you at? I see you, whatever. But you're not actually talking to air traffic control. So again, to address the misconception, very rarely am I talking to air traffic control unless you're flying through one of those airspaces or you're landing there. There is a small exception to that rule. A lot of times on a cross-country flight, I will get what is called flight following, and that is talking to air traffic control. That's basically just them being my backup, keeping an eye out for other traffic as I'm looking out for traffic out the windscreen. If you have any other misconceptions that you get asked a bunch as a pilot, leave them down below. Let me know what they are. I'd love to hear about them. Sometimes it's kind of comical, not to laugh at people, but just the fact that some people that are not in aviation have a lot of misconceptions. So I'd love to hear them from you. Leave a comment down below. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on future videos. Until next time, thanks for watching. Take care.